Saruman's hybrid orc soldiers, the Uruk-Hai, have significantly disrupted the existence of the Free People. Grĉima Wormtongue, a chief advisor of King Theoden and henchman of Saruman's, snaps following a period of manipulation and abuse at the hands of Saruman. After Saruman contemptuously disregards Wormtongue in response to Frodo's offer of mercy to both of them, Wormtongue slits Saruman's throat. What happened to the Uruk-Hai after Saruman's sudden demise? The Uruk-Hai, an entirely developed and adorned species of orcs, originally emerged from the depths of Isengard. They were resplendent with formidable weapons and black armor. These entities, often misclassified as common orcs, performed a function beyond that of mere foot soldiers in Saruman's grand scheme. They embodied the pinnacle of orc civilization, having been engineered to possess heightened physical powers, agility, and brutality. The Uruk-Hai were widely recognized for their ability to terrify opponents and their steadfast devotion to those in authority, whether Saruman or Sauron. However, in the aftermath of the conflict, these war-bred beings found themselves without purpose in a world that had rejected their vicious nature. To fully comprehend the origins of Middle-earth, one must travel back to a time when the forces of light and shadow were engaged in an eternal conflict. Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme omniscient deity of Arda, transcends any physical realm, serving as the genesis of all creation. Our tale commences with his notable creations, the elves emerging near Lake Cuivianen. Elves and humans, as the children of Ilúvatar, inhabited Arda during the First Age, actively shaping its course. The Ainur, crafted by Ilúvatar, comprised the Valar and the Maiar. The Valar, 14 powers of Arda molded from Eru's thoughts, governed the world from the continent of Aman. Endowed with the ability to shape the world through music, the Valar participated in the grand symphony of creation, save for Melkor. Initially intended to aid in constructing Ilúvatar's ideal world, Melkor coveted this power for himself, becoming the first Dark Lord. His insatiable desire led to chaos and destruction, culminating in his banishment from Middle-earth by the host of Valinor. However, his malevolence persisted, spawning further darkness across the realm. In Tolkien's universe, where only goodness begets creation and darkness corrupts, Melkor's corruption gave rise to the orcs, the primary soldiers of the Dark Lord's armies. Derived from the Avari, elves who never reached Aman, the orcs exhibited diverse social structures and breeds. Leaders like Azog and Bolg emerged from these societies, showcasing their distinct qualities and governance. In the Third Age, Saruman augmented this malevolent lineage by breeding the Uruk-Hai through dark sorcery. These formidable entities, embodying an insidious fusion of men and original orcs, became renowned for their unwavering loyalty, strength, and tenacity. Among the 7 distinct species of orcs, the Uruk-Hai stood as the ultimate breed, destined to leave a profound impact on wartime conflicts. The Uruk-Hai's creation heralded a critical juncture in the War of the Rings, marking them as pivotal players in the struggle between light and darkness. Yet, with the collapse of Saruman, their purpose became uncertain. Stripped of leadership and direction, they faced a world that perceived them as remnants of a defeated adversary. Their fate, now shrouded in speculation, raises profound questions about their existence in a world grappling with the aftermath of war. It is reasonable to hypothesize that the orcs have gained some of their lengthy existence by their ancestral kinship with the elves. Unlike their ethereal counterparts, these entities of darkness exhibited a reduced lifespan and were vulnerable to an array of abhorrent ailments. While both orcs and elves are susceptible to death in combat, the Uruk-Hai were explicitly built for conquest. In pursuit of the throne of Middle-earth, Saruman strategically designed the Uruk-Hai to be solar-resistant, unlike their orcish ancestors. This meant that, whereas original orcs would have only been able to attack at night, the Uruk-Hai could attack during the daytime as well. The creation and emancipation of these forces signified a critical juncture in the War of the Rings, given that their establishment initiated an age of perpetual strife for the free peoples. The Uruk-Hai, particularly those under the leadership of Ugluk, were of critical importance in the conflict that transpired in the latter part of the Fellowship of the Ring. Under Saruman's erroneous command, their primary objective in this conflict was to apprehend the 4 hobbits, including Frodo, to secure the One Ring. As the Uruk-Hai dispersed along Amon Hen slopes, near the western banks of the river Anduin, they launched a surprise assault on the hobbits. As a result, a tumultuous battle ensued, in which Boromir valiantly perished while attempting to safeguard Pippin and Merry. As for the Fellowship's endeavors, the Uruk-Hai managed to apprehend 2 of the hobbits, Merry and Pippin, believing one of them to be the ring-bearer. The sequence of events following their apprehension involved the separation of the Fellowship, and the dawn of quests attempting to rescue the hobbits and destroy the One Ring, all of which serve as a pivotal point in the narrative. The Uruk-Hai served as the principal attacking force in the Battle of Helm's Deep. Saruman's Uruk-Hai initiated a siege against the Rohirrim stronghold of Helm's Deep, supported by the other orcs and allied forces from Dunland. During combat, the Uruk-Hai exhibited exceptional fortitude and strategic maneuvers in the siege, possessing weapons and armor forged in Isengard. They exhibited a level or organization and discipline not typical of orcs. Throughout the siege, the Uruk-Hai led extensive military campaigns attempting to breach the Hornburg gates and the Deeping Wall through sheer brute force. One of the most dramatic moments occurred when they succeeded in breaching the Deeping Wall, a 20-foot fortress encapsulating Helm's Deep, using a specially designed explosive device. This apparatus developed by Saruman left a gaping hole in the Deeping Wall, permitting the Uruk-Hai forces to enter the fortress without qualms. The defenders retreated into caves within Helm's Deep. After a moment, a sortie was deployed to stop the invasion and reclaim Helm's Deep, led by Theoden and Aragorn. They cut through orcs and Dunlendings, attempting to maintain control of the Helm. Despite sustaining substantial casualties, the Uruk-Hai fought throughout the night, further exemplifying their fortitude and resolve to execute Saruman's orders. Dawn marked the conclusion of the Battle of Helm's Deep, with the arrival of Gandalf, Erkenbrand, and the riders of Rohan. The Dunlendings were terrified of Gandalf and could no longer fight, whereas the orcs ran off into the trees where they were destroyed. This lifted the siege of Helm's Deep and marked another turning point in the conflict against Saruman. The conflict revealed a critical vulnerability: leadership. The entirety of the leadership was in the hands of Saruman. Under the alias Sharky, he seizes power in the Shire. He then initiates a campaign to despoil and industrialize the location, although the hobbits rapidly overthrow him. In retaliation for his defeat at the hands of the hobbits, Saruman engages in even further manipulation and abuse towards Wormtongue, the chief counselor at the court of King Theoden of Rohan. After Saruman contemptuously disregards Wormtongue in a conversation, Wormtongue snaps and slits Saruman's throat. He is then fatally shot by hobbit archers. The collapse of Saruman had a profound impact on the Uruk-Hai. After being stripped of their leader and sole objective, they were confronted by a society that regarded them as the dark remnants of a defeated foe. This leaves the question: what will happen to the Uruk-Hai now that Saruman is no longer? Despite possessing enhanced abilities, the Uruk-Hai were still duty-bound to emulate the actions of their progenitor. The end of Saruman's military operations resulted in the Uruk-Hai being devoid of purpose and guidance. And at this point, their fate is merely a subject of speculation. The Uruk-Hai faced a society that perceived them as dwindling remnants of a vanquished adversary. Tolkien's universe often explores the perpetual conflict between light and dark, the potential for salvation, and the essence of evil. Can the Uruk-Hai find a new purpose in a world recovering from the devastation of war? Given that these orcs were designed for combat, it is probable that they persisted in the fighting until the very end. There are specific texts that imply the Uruk-Hai may have gone on to join Sauron's army, even after the demise of Saruman. Perhaps they did. Assimilation into society, an unlikely occurrence, involves a progressive decline in the attributes society perceives as negative. Although improbable, it is not impossible. You may recall this dialogue that took place between Gorbag and Shagrat.
I'd like to try somewhere where there's none of them, but the war's on now, and when that's over, things may be easier. It's going well, they say, said Shagrat.
They would, grunted Gorbag. We'll see. But anyway, if it does go well, there should be a lot more room. What do you say? If we get a chance, you and me'll slip off and set up somewhere on our own with a few trusty lads, somewhere where there's good loot nice and handy, and no big bosses.
Ah, said Shagrat, like old times.
Regular orcs might be capable of leading a life resembling normalcy following the demise of their leader. However, Uruk-Hai, bred for combat and devotion, likely cannot. Another possible outcome would be internal conflict culminating in a full-scale altercation amongst themselves, though even this seems improbable. The most likely outcome is that they face a mass extinction at the hands of men. After the defeat of Saruman, men take precedence as the dominant free people. Elves essentially fade into the background. Due to the symbolism of the orcs as a consistently dark adversary to the free people, it would make sense if man wiped out all that represented the Dark Lord. It is debatable that, after death, the Uruk-Hai could potentially be granted access to the halls of Mandos as descendants of the elves, who are themselves immortal. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe.